Okay, welcome to another episode of Glen Yaps. This time I'm going to explain keyboard sequencing and Midi. Over the years, I've had a couple of bands that used sequence keyboards. One of the main reasons why I use sequence keyboards instead of a real keyboard player, the simplest reason is cost. I don't have to pay an extra player. The second reason is I play keyboards and I enjoy the whole sequencing process, creating my own keyboard lines for my own original music. That carried over into some of the cover songs we were doing. So, being that I'm a computer geek, it was just a natural evolution for me. I'm not a great keyboard player, and there are some tricks that I've learned along the way to make me sound way better than I am. And it's not cheating. I don't call it cheating. But basically, I learn these songs, the keyboard parts, by using special software to slow the original song down. Say if we're doing a cover song, to slow it down so I can learn it at a much lower speed. And with computer software, you are able to keep the song in the original key. Back in the old days, before computers, you used to slow the tapes down. I used to learn on reel-to-reel, so if I had to learn something slow, I would have to change speeds on the reel-to-reel tape, or if you had a record player, you had 4 speeds. You know, it would be 78, 45, 33, and 16 speeds. Revolutions per minute, I'm assuming that's what the turntable was. But the problem is it would change the pitch. So if you were playing guitar or bass, you would have to tune your instrument down along with that. So you would be playing in the same key. And then once you learned it at that slower speed and knew where all the notes were, you would put it back up to speed, tune your guitar or bass up, and you would be playing at speed. Don't have to do that anymore, kids. It's right there. Your basic Windows media player will slow the song down and keep it in the same key. Most of you probably don't even know that. You've been learning songs the hard way. Because you go on your computer and play your favorite song, and if you want to learn on a guitar, there is a setting, it's just a factory setting for Windows Media Player, where you can slow the song down and keep it in pitch. There are other softwares out there that can do more than just that media player. SoundForge is one I use a lot. It's just whatever you want to use. But the basic one, Windows Media Player, will do that exact same thing, so you can learn Eddie Van Halen's guitar lead at a slower speed while not having to tune your guitar. It's fantastic. You can do it for drums, bass, and keyboards. Now the problem with keyboards, for me, my mother was a fantastic piano player, classical trained, won awards for it. I am not a great keyboard player. Although she inspired me, I can only play so fast. I never worked at it. I have a piano, a real piano, and I have the synthesizer behind me, but it's not one of the main instruments I focused on. I wish I had, but focused on to get better at. I use it for my songwriting, to add certain parts into my original material. I write really strange original music, and I just need weird keyboards in certain parts, and I just play them as best as I can. In the case of the cover songs, I do exactly like I said earlier. I slow things down, like we used to do a song called Spaceship Superstar by Prism. Fantastic keyboard solo at the end. Well, there's no way I can play that at that speed. But slowed down, I learned the notes, and yes, I can play it. Anybody can play it if they work at it. But we wanted to play live with the material. I'm a drummer, and I wanted the keyboard track in there. Couldn't find a keyboard player anyways to play that song. at the time. So we were a three-piece band. I like the power trio thing, bass, guitar, drums with keyboard sequencing. Some people call it a Rush influence. But anyways, so I learned the song slow, so I could play it slow. So when I recorded the song, when I had to do the actual track, I played it, I got better at it, and I played it, you know, at a faster speed than the slowest setting I was learning it on, but nowhere near the original. But I still played it, and all I did was up the speed. So I sound great on it, but basically I cannot play that thing to speed. I still couldn't do it to this day. I'd have to relearn it anyways because it was years ago, but there's just no way I could play it up to speed. I don't have the talent for it. If I worked at it and worked at it and worked at it, I probably could, but that would be one song and I wasn't going to dedicate my life to it. So that is the only little cheater that I did. As for the actual playing, I played the actual song. I'm going to show you how I do keyboards. A lot of people, they listen to my material and they go, they wonder, you know, well, how is he doing that? How is he doing that? When we play live, it's like, how did he create these massive layers of keyboards and sound effects and things? So I'm going to show you a little bit of how I do it. I don't have a lot of time to do videos on this particular subject matter because it would take forever. But let's just say I've worked on this for years and years and years. I've worked on this. I've been drumming for 36 years. I've definitely been working with keyboards for 20. So, but I don't work at being a better player. I work on the technology side. It's like I want to find an easy way to do it, but still let me have the hands-on while playing it. So anyways, the basic breakdown. I have a synthesizer behind me. It's an old PV DPM-4, and I paid a good amount of bucks for it. This keyboard, a variable of this, was played by the keyboard player in Sting, 10 Sumner's Tales. I forget the gentleman's name. Fantastic piano player. His keyboard had the weighted keys. This is just a synth. Anyways, the sounds in it are great, but being that the keyboard is old, well, actually, let me explain this. You have sounds in these synthesizers. When you buy them, they have factory sounds, and that's fantastic. That might last everybody their lifetime. On this one here, it had great sounds, but I wanted more sounds. So there was companies like ProRec that used to sell libraries of their program sounds to be used in these type of keyboards. And this goes for all synthesizers out there on the market. After a while, you know, you can keep paying for all this stuff, and it gets costly just to go buy a whole library for one sound that you want. Like say you want a Leslie organ sound like Deep Purple, like the Hammond organ, and you pay big bucks for it. And after a while, it's like, you know what? I'm just using this for the basics. This is killing me cost-wise. So what I ended up doing was using the keyboard as a typical controller. That's it. I don't use any sounds in this keyboard at all. None. Zero. This is where the confusion comes in with MIDI and sequencing. When I play live, I am not using MIDI. The only time MIDI comes into factor with this keyboard, and I want everybody to listen because I used to get flack for this on stage from people all the time. You know, MIDI is cheating, MIDI, MIDI, MIDI. You know, it's not cheating. But here's the funny part. I never used it live. People just, when they don't understand, they cut you down anyways because they don't see a person actually on stage playing it, so they call that cheating. And they associated it with MIDI. Well, that is total wrong. It's not MIDI. The only part of MIDI is how this keyboard talks to this computer. Right up here. That is it. It's a cable, connects to the back of this computer, and it's the language between that keyboard and that computer. This is my setup. Sure, there are other players that you see live that will have a MIDI setup on stage. Some karaoke is MIDI. This is not. This is keyboard with a MIDI cable to talk to the computer. That's the only MIDI part of it. The software here that I'm using is Sonar. I've also got, you see I'll show you in a sec, I'll bring the camera closer. There's a B4 Hammond organ program that I love. They don't make it anymore, that I got, and it costs big bucks, and it's fantastic. It's just one of the only ways you're going to get Deep Purple organ sound. You know, the band Deep Purple, great organ sound. It's the only way you're going to get that kind of sound through this kind of computer setup. Anyways, now, you don't need a synthesizer to do what I do. It just makes it easier. Keep in mind that this is now just a controller. It controls the notes that I play into the software, and the software records the notes I play. Okay? Now, it doesn't record any sound. It records the actual motion. It records how long I hold a note. That is the MIDI part that people don't understand. It's not recording any sounds at this in my system right now. Okay? And nor will it ever. It's basically recording the movements of my hand. So if I'm playing a chord with 4 or 5 notes and I hit them, it's recording those. Just the motions. Okay? Now you don't need this synthesizer. You can also do it on your regular typing keyboard. Okay? If I hit a note on the keyboard, I'm going to try and do this. Let me turn this up a little bit. Okay, this is the synthesizer I'm hitting. Okay, that's the synthesizer. But now my keyboard down here, the typing keyboard, I can hit notes. And I can make chords. And you can use it as a synthesizer. This is a controller that you type on. That's called a controller, just like this is a controller. They are exactly the same. Okay? The advantage of the keyboard, obviously you have all the keys, the whites and the blacks. Where on here you're limited to a shorter octave bass, we'll say. Okay? So, if you want to use a synthesizer, you have to make sure you buy a synthesizer that has MIDI capability. And MIDI just means a cable, a special cable. It's about this long. It's already plugged in. I wish I could show you. But very inexpensive. And what you have to do is find a way to convert that MIDI cable into a language that the computer understands. So we need what we call an interface, which is basically a little box that takes the MIDI signals, you know, for whatever I play, puts it in a box, converts it so the computer can understand what I'm doing. And I use a cakewalk USB based interface. That basically means MIDI cable comes out of this keyboard, plugs into a MIDI side of the cakewalk interface, which is a little box like this, and then on the other side it's converted into USB, which is common computer port on most computers these days. It converts it to that so that the software recognizes it. Alright? And if I can show you, I don't know if I can get it out with short cable here. I'll try, but I don't know if you can see that. this is it. The MIDI goes into here. On this side, you can run up to 4 instruments of MIDI, so 4 keyboards or a drum machine, or like not a drum machine, but yeah, a drum machine, or like electronic drum pads, because they're MIDI also. Goes out the cable to USB into the computer. Very simple. You can buy these at most music stores outside of Sault Ste. Marie, because Sault Ste. Marie has nothing to do with this type of thing. They just stick to the basics here. Very disappointing. I had to search for it and got it at one of the main stores in Toronto. But okay, so that's the first part. Keyboards into the interface, into the computer, and then you have to set up your software. I use Sonar if you're going to record a keyboard track. I use Sonar. There are simpler programs. There are more complicated, more expensive programs. Sonar is a fantastic middle of the ground, middle of the road type software. I record most of my music, my guitars, drums, and stuff in Sonar. It's a great program to cover everything you need. Okay, so this is part 1. Okay, I'll go to part 2 in a sec.